Today has been a rather crazy day, my friends. What with Elon Musk attempting a hostile takeover of Twitter, we're now learning a Saudi prince, one of the largest shareholders in Twitter, is rejecting the deal, saying Twitter's worth way more than what Elon Musk is offering. However, I think that's likely not to be true in a financial sense. From a political standpoint, why, the Saudi prince is absolutely correct. And who am I to question the capabilities of one of the greatest investors on the planet? Now, you may be thinking, what does this have to do with the RNC? I mean, that's the story you clicked, right? It has a lot to do with it. But here is the big story. The RNC, the Republican National Committee, has withdrawn from the Commission on Presidential Debates, suggesting, I think it's fair to say, there will not be official debates between the 2024 presidential candidates. And why? Well, the Republicans are saying the whole system is biased. And they produced a list showing exactly where that bias is. And that brings me back to Twitter, a platform that is overtly biased. But there are interesting questions about how the bias manifests and what its results are. Certainly, I believe banning Donald Trump was bad for Twitter and bad for Trump. I think that banning many right-wing personalities has hindered Republicans' ability to organize and forced them to try and pander to more left-leaning opinions because that's the engagement they see. But there is a potential backfiring here. Donald Trump is not popular among older women. And according to AARP, of course, they have to take this stance, or at least a similar one. They're saying women over 50 will decide the upcoming elections. The reason is, this is the one group that isn't really decided. And perhaps it's because of Donald Trump. Now, women over 50 may not really be the deciding factor. AARP, of course, is putting out information. They have a poll, and this is their target demographic. So they want to advocate for people that are a part of their organization, or at least who they're targeting. But I do think it's fair to say that suburban women and older women do play a major and outsized role in what's going to happen in 2022 and 2024. And so censorship also comes into play here. If Donald Trump is a loudmouth, arrogant, and lewd man in public media, as he has been, and he is a leading candidate with the Republican Party, you're going to lose these voters. Ron DeSantis, on the other hand, he's younger, he's fearless, he's aggressive, but he has a bit more tact. Now, I'm a fan of Donald Trump to a certain degree. I voted for him in 2020, and depending on what we see in the presidential election, I'd be willing to vote for him again. There's no outright no. Depending on who the Democrats put forward, I got to be honest, I am not inclined to vote for any Democrat because of the insanity, the bias, and the corruption that we have seen from the establishment. And to put it mildly, if the Republicans put forward someone like Mitt Romney, I ain't going anywhere near those votes. But a Ron DeSantis, I would prefer DeSantis over Trump. But we'll see. We don't know for sure. If the bias on social media and the manipulation in media and big tech continues, Republicans don't stand a chance. No matter what the polls are saying, we are fighting an uphill battle. We are clawing an uphill battle, crawling to try and get information out. And Twitter, they suppress key information that could harm Democrats, like we saw with the Hunter Biden laptop. It really is catastrophic for conservatives and for right-leaning moderates, or anybody who's sick of the establishment garbage. And that's why the Twitter story is relevant in this context. But mostly, the Saudi prince. Well, I could talk about Vanguard and BlackRock, but I'm going to focus this segment on politics, what may come in 2022 and 2024. And I think the reason the Saudi prince is relevant is he's rejecting the deal, but I think it's for political and ideological reasons. There is an interest in controlling the narrative in this country, and external forces have the ability to do that. Foreign sources can do that by buying a stake in Twitter, which is becoming our public town square. But let's talk about what's happening with the RNC first. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member to help support our work. As a member, you'll get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, Monday through Thursday at 8 p.m. But members support this right here. What you are watching, this video, we are able to keep this mission going, our operation, news, commentary, and our new shows, thanks to you as members. If you like the work we do, if you believe in the mission of challenging culture, changing the political landscape, and ending the bias, become a member at timcast.com. But don't forget to also smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show, share this URL wherever you can. Grassroots marketing is the most powerful. Now, let's read that first story from Axios. The RNC withdraws from Commission on Presidential Debates. Axios reports the Republican National Committee voted unanimously Thursday in favor of withdrawing from the Commission on Presidential Debates. Quote, the commission is biased and has refused to enact simple and common sense reforms to help ensure fair debates, including hosting debates before voting begins and selecting moderators who have never worked for candidates on the debate stage, RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel said in a press release. Today, the RNC voted to withdraw from the biased CPD, and we are going to find newer, better debate platforms to ensure that future nominees are not forced to go through the biased CPD in order to make their case to the American people. Debates are an important part of the democratic process, and the RNC is committed to free and fair debates. The Republican Party for nearly a decade has complained the Nonprofit Debate Commission, which has described itself as nonpartisan, has favored Democrats, according to the New York Times. I agree with the Republican Party, and I think it's obvious. And the RNC didn't just release a statement. They issued key points, facts on what happened that prove bias. They're going to say last year, McDaniel warned CPD that the RNC would advise future Republican candidates against participating in Commission on Presidential Debate hosted debates unless significant reforms were made. In January, the RNC reiterated their position by sending a letter to the CPD threatening to block future GOP presidential nominees from sanctioned debates if meaningful reforms are not made. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the press release from the RNC that not only made the statement, but provided background info. They say, restoring faith in our elections means making sure our candidates can compete on a level playing field. Today, the RNC has voted to withdraw the Republican participation from the biased Commission on Presidential Debates. The rule change is the culmination of a year-long process. To be clear, we are not walking away from debates. We are walking away from the CPD. It is biased and does not serve the interest of the American people. And here's some examples. Waiting until 26 states had begun early voting before hosting the first debate in 2020, making unilateral changes to previously agreed upon debate formats and conditions, in some cases without even notifying the candidates, selecting a moderator in 2020 who had once worked for Joe Biden, failing to maintain the organization's strict nonpartisan, with a majority of its board members publicly disparaging the Republican nominee. Ronna McDaniel and RNC officials repeatedly asked CPD to reform and make changes to future debates to ensure a fair and impartial forum. Unfortunately, the CPD was unwilling to make common sense reforms. The Republican Party deserves better. The American people deserve better. We know that when Republicans have a free and fair forum, we win because our policies are best for the American people. We look forward to exploring other avenues for candidates to have a free and fair forum for all Americans. Okay. Well, let me take a jump over to this story from the New York Post. Saudi Prince Al-Walid bin Talal rejects Elon Musk's Twitter takeover bid. On the surface, not really a related story. But if you understand the nuance of what's happening in this country when it comes to politics, the inner workings, you'll see exactly why this is important. Let me connect the dots for you. There is absolutely a bias in media and institutions against Republicans. I can give you one simple point to prove it, and it's the point I often bring up that stems from the discussion I had with Jack Dorsey and Vijaya Gadde over at the Joe Rogan Experience. And that on Twitter, they have a misgendering policy. The misgendering policy means that if you use the pronouns a person does not identify with, you will be banned. This culminated in the moment when Zuby, a famous rapper, said, "Okay, dude," in response to a trans woman and received a suspension for misgendering. Now, that policy is absolutely absurd to anybody on the right. The misgendering policy exemplifies the bias. On the left, they feel it is misgendering if a person says their pronouns are she, her, but you use he, him. On the right, it is considered misgendering someone if you use pronouns that don't align with their biological sex. Two distinct worldviews, yet Twitter upholds one of them, not the other. That is proof of bias. Now, of course, the left responded by saying Tim's being transphobic, but I did not argue that it was right or wrong to have either policy. I am arguing that the policy proves that Twitter sides with one side over the other. The left is free to say it's the right move. I didn't say it wasn't. I simply said it's evidence of a hard bias. Now, why would a Saudi prince reject Elon Musk's bid, which is a 38% premium on the platform? Well, in a statement, they said that it doesn't reflect the true value of Twitter. I agree, but I don't think it's financial. I think Elon Musk's offer is a great deal, considering Goldman Sachs, I believe, has a selling point of $30, and Elon Musk offered $54.20. Well, the Saudi prince rejected it, and the reason for it is, as I've long maintained, and many others have as well, this massive stake in the company, which I believe is around 5.5%, gives them control of a platform that can alter the political discourse in this country. That is to say, foreign individuals and foreign interests know the power of Twitter. The value is controlling politics in this country. The bias that is favorable to Democrats and the left, and they're not going to give it up. Now, I guess it's a private company, and there's no way to force an investor to sell off their interests. But I think the reason this is happening, the reason why so many people are hell-bent on controlling Twitter, is that this platform, the bias we see, it is upstream from politics. And this is when the RNC says there's a bias, you need to understand it stems from control of culture. Politics is downstream from culture. If you can control the creation of culture, you can control the politics after the fact. If no one is allowed to question Democrat talking points, and if Twitter is allowed to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story, Democrats will win. Surprise, surprise. Donald Trump. Abraham Accords, arguably good for the Middle East. I don't know the interests of Saudi Prince Al-Walid, but if Donald Trump were to get our troops and our assets out of the Middle East, well, we sell weapons to the Saudis. There is U.S. activity in the Middle East. I wonder if the Saudis have an interest in maintaining the current establishment position. Perhaps they want a piece of any oil or energy deals that go into Europe. You see, Russia, who Donald Trump was not particularly adversarial with, but a little bit, they produce a large quantity of energy that goes into Europe. The Middle East and various countries produce a large quantity of energy as well, but they compete with Russia. Well, the Biden administration and the Democrats seem to be opposed to Russia to a great degree. It's funny how those interests align, isn't it? I firmly believe there are special interests buying up property and assets in this country to influence politics. You'd be a fool not to think so. I don't know about the Saudi prince, but my personal opinion is that he's rejecting a bid, which is a good buyout offer, because the real value is the manipulation of political opinion. So I think the RNC is right to pull out. Matthew Iglesias says, everyone knows that Musk reinstating Trump on Twitter would be good for Democrats, but nobody wants to say it. It's interesting. Why would they then not do it? It would be good for Democrats in the sense that Trump looks bad. I agree with that. But it certainly exposes, in my opinion, that Twitter's motivations are not monetary. Trump was making the platform bigger. Why boot him off the platform? Matthew Iglesias says it would be good for Democrats. In a certain sense, I think it would. I don't know. All I can say is there's a political motivation, in my opinion. Over at CNN, Democrats intensify fight against Biden immigration policy. And now we can see where things are starting to break down. It looks like with the move by Elon Musk and with the latest polls and the failures of the Biden administration, the Democrats are in serious trouble. Maybe this is a reason why they won't bring Trump back. The last thing I don't know. I honestly don't know, because Trump would force them to take certain positions. The Democratic Party was forced to abandon long-standing positions on immigration because of Trump. Oh, you think I'm wrong? Go back to 2008. Hillary Clinton called for a border barrier. Bernie Sanders called for a border barrier. In 2015, Bernie Sanders called for securing the border. But when Donald Trump tweets all day, every day, build a big, beautiful wall from sea to shining sea, the Democrats must oppose him. Maybe they want to take his positions, hey, like we saw Joe Biden do in his faux State of the Union address. But having a loud and vocal Donald Trump, having him speak up on policy puts you in a difficult position. You know, perhaps, I don't know. Democrats are fighting right now. Beto O'Rourke has done a 180. All of a sudden, he's like, we got to secure our borders. I mean, that sounds downright Trumpian. But if Trump were the one leading that charge, Beto O'Rourke would have no choice but to reject Trump's proposal. That's the joke, right? There was an article from the Babylon Bee that said Donald Trump, in genius move, Trump endorses his own impeachment, forcing Democrat to oppose. That was the joke. The joke was anything Trump was for, the Democrats had to be against. And that put them at odds with the American people because as bad as Trump was in a lot of ways, people liked his policy. It was fairly moderate. Even Matthew Iglesias and Vox pointed out Donald Trump was a moderate. He's just bombastic. Keeping him off the platform allows Democrats to endorse positions that are more favorable to Americans and not be in constant opposition to Trump. I think it's all one big, dirty political game. Of course, you end up seeing the second bus of Central American migrants from Texas arrives at the U.S. Capitol. There's a fight happening. Absolutely. And whether or not Trump is the right guy for the job, people are upset about what's happening in this country. And I think Democrats are spiraling out of control. I think they're losing control of the narrative in the mainstream media. And I think Elon Musk's latest move has exposed the political manipulation. I'll just repeat this. Twitter has a price target, I believe. Goldman Sachs says it's $30. Fact check me on that because I saw a tweet going around. I'm not entirely sure it's correct, but either way, the Twitter stock is around $48 and he offers $54 per share. Everybody makes money. Why would you not take that when Twitter is a suffering platform? Because they want political control. But everyone can then see it. They can see that when these big investors say we don't want to make money, they're after something else, and it is political motivation. Big changes are heading our way. Big changes are coming. The other reason why I want to highlight this bill, the buses coming to the Capitol, is to talk about the increase in fearlessness among some Republicans. The Republican Party, in my opinion, doesn't do anything really to help us, but there are some Republicans that are doing things that have an impact. The RNC withdrawing from the debates. Bold move. I respect it. Good job. What else do we got? Greg Abbott sending migrants to the Capitol? Okay, not a perfect solution, but I understand the statement. We have this. Kentucky lawmakers override Governor Beshear's vetoes on abortion, fairness, and women's sports bills. The override means both bills will go into effect immediately. Wow. Republicans are starting to take bold moves, at least at the local level. I'm sure that this is bad news for Democrats. We have this from Florida. Ron DeSantis signs 15-week abortion ban into law. More and more Republicans are standing up, rejecting the establishment line, rejecting the Democrats. And you know what I have to say? I believe that this is the fault of the corporate press and big tech. You see, there was a point where if you gave an opportunity of some people on the right to speak, they would take it. If you said to Alex Jones, avoid talking about certain things that we fear could cause violence, and you're fine, he'd say okay. And he really did try before he got banned. He would say things and then go, I mean that figuratively, of course, because he didn't want to get banned. But then they banned him. Now he's unleashed. They lose control of the narrative. When Jones gets banned, he doesn't just disappear. He keeps doing his show and he still gets millions of views. He's still on the radio. Now he says whatever he wants. He riles people up. And Republicans eventually say, I am done compromising. I am done negotiating. It gets us nowhere and you are playing dirty. So the RNC pulls out of the debates. You are not gaining control by playing dirty games. You have to give a little to maintain control, and it was that simple. For the longest time, the media, big tech, the presidential debates were able to control, to a certain degree, what the Republicans and the right were able to do. Well, they've gone too far. They severed the line between the two, and now they have no pull factor. The way we used to describe it is that the Democrats, the left, were constantly pulling Republicans to the left, but the Republicans were being dragged and slowing them down. Some said it was good that we worked towards progress, and it was important that the right made sure it didn't go too fast and spiral out of control. But at a certain point, the left decided we're constrained, snipped the cord, and jumped so far left, everyone else is left standing there watching them saying, y'all have lost your minds. So now the Republicans are saying, we got a coalition with moderates, and we're going to take it. And you know what? I think we're actually seeing that. So let's go through some of this data. I see this article from this press release from the AARP. Of course, this is the Association of Retired Persons, and they say women voters ages 50 and over will decide the balance of power in the next election. I am not entirely convinced that's true, but I think it's an interesting data point, and I want to show you what the data means. They're going to say, new research released today by AARP in partnership with pollsters Celinda Lake, Christine Matthews, Kirsten Soltis, Anderson and Margie O'Maro found that only 17% of women in this important voting bloc have made up their mind about who they will vote for in the 2022 election. About 2/3, 65%, say they will not make their decisions until weeks or just days before Election Day. Contrary to conventional wisdom, women voters age 50 and over do not solidly belong to either party's camp. And the vast majority haven't made up their minds about how they'll vote in November, said Nancy Leomond, AARP Chief Advocacy and Engagement Officer. The instability and uncertainty of the economy, the pandemic, and the political environment are leading these women to demand that candidates address quality of life and pocketbook issues like the cost of living, supply chain problems, and ways to end the discord permeating politics today. What are the issues that concern them? 72% are concerned about having enough income to keep up with rising costs, with 48% saying they are very concerned. A majority, 52%, say the economy is not working well for them, a 15-point change from 2019 when just 37% said the same. Right there. It's the economy, stupid. What are Democrats focused on? Cultural, social justice, and woke issues. Bravo! Under Donald Trump in 2019, the best numbers of our lives. Will this play a role? I certainly think so. Let me show you some data. Let's jump over to civics. This is the Democratic Party favorable rating among age 50 to 64 females. They find the Democratic Party to be 50% unfavorable and 42% favorable. Not all that bad, but 50% unfavorable? I wonder what that means. We got to look at some more data. The Republican Party favorable rating among the same demographic is bad. 30% favorable, 56% unfavorable. Now, here's what's interesting. 56% unfavorable? More people? Wait, hold on. 50% say unfavorable. The Republicans are hated more by this demographic and less favorable, while 13% are unsure. I can't say I'm surprised. Republicans are trash. However, things are changing. If the issue is economics, I feel that you might actually say, I don't like the Republican Party. But are you going to vote for Democrats that aren't actually fighting for economic issues? It's hard to say. Let's take a look at all demographics and see exactly how they feel. Among all demographics, 55% find the Democratic Party to be unfavorable and 37% favorable. Let's go over to the Republicans and look at all demographics. Among all demographics, it's 57 to 31. Most people don't like the Republican Party. You want to know what I find truly the most fascinating? When you go to this poll from Civics, it says, which political party do you think is more concerned with the needs of people like you? 40% say Democrats, 35% say Republicans, and 22% say neither. Yeah, I think Democrats are mostly in a cult. But you also need to understand that Democrats are quickly becoming a smaller political faction as independent voters and Republicans seem to be aligning, in which case we must reassess the question here. If women ages 50 and up are what matter most in this upcoming election, let's take a look at the data. Democratic Party favorable rating age 50 to 64, female, independent. Now, what we find here is when you pull this, you can see favorability among Democrats is 29%. And 58% unfavorable among independents. So more independent voters do not like the Democratic Party. But these are a specific demographic, 50 to 64-year-old women, independent voters. There's no guarantee it will be any better for Republicans. So let's take a look. Unfavorable or favorable opinion of the Republicans. We're going to go with 50 to 64, female, and independent. And here we can see, actually, fares a little bit better in terms of unfavorability. 29% favorable for Democrats, 23% favorable among Republicans, but 22% unsure. However, 55% unfavorable for Republicans, 58% unfavorable. Perhaps it's all meaningless because, truth be told, it's just maybe this point matters, maybe it doesn't. I think when you eliminate this voting block, because it is very speculative, you'll see it is independent voters that are typically siding with Republicans, but maybe not necessarily Republicans. Maybe the real issue is populists. If we take a look at the favorable opinion of the Democrats among independents, 67% unfavorable, 21% favorable. If we jump over to the Republican Party and take a look at independent voters across the board, we can see 59% unfavorable, 22% favorable. That is to say, independents lean slightly to the right. 19% unsure. And it's that unsure that I think matters the most. So we'll see how things play out. When we look at civics, national economy, current condition, how would you rate the condition of the national economy right now? Well, 50 to 64-year-old females say it is. This is interesting. 43% very bad, 28% fairly good, 21% fairly bad. Okay. We're digging through the political polls, but let me put it this way. Perhaps whether you like a party or not is less material than whether or not you're concerned about the economy, which is why I highlighted 72% citing income as the key issue. If 64%, a plurality, believe the economy is bad, maybe they will simply vote for change. And that's all that matters. But this does include Democrat women who are probably going to vote Democrat no matter what. So let's crank it up to independent. And what do we get? Uh-oh. Now we're looking at, remarkably, 71% of independent females, 50 to 64, say the economy is bad. And very bad is increasing. It stands to reason. If this is the prime voting bloc, and it may be, that's bad news for Democrats. Because it's kind of up in the air between the two parties. People don't like Republicans, but will they vote for change? I think the answer is yes. A referendum on the Democratic Party. Among independent voters, it is even worse. 76% say the economy is bad. Only 20% say the economy is to some degree good. And to me, it's kind of insane that anybody would think the economy is good right now, considering we're talking about global famines and gas prices are through the roof. But let's play the game, my friends. Let's take a look at how the Democrats feel about the economy. Remarkably, 45% say fairly good. 10% say very good. That is, 55% of Democrats think the economy is to some degree good. That is objectively insane. We have got inflation at massive highs, record highs, going back to the 80s, 8.5%. We have a labor shortage. My hotel can't even get me cream for my coffee. And you think this economy is good? These people are in a cult. Now, maybe that's all that matters because cult members are going to vote for the cult. But among Democrat voters, to have only 39% saying the economy is bad? Wow. You know, it's really fascinating. According to one poll, 59% of Democrats agree with Ron DeSantis' parental rights and education bill in Florida. Maybe the real issue here is that Republicans, the establishment, are garbage. Maybe if we primary these people and bring in legitimate America First populists, maybe many of these voters would actually change their mind. Among Republicans, I ask you, is the economy good? Yeah, you knew where this is going. 93% of Republicans say the economy is bad. I'm just going to stop y'all right here. It is insane to think that in January of 20, right before Biden got inaugurated, Republicans just changed their mind and all of a sudden thought the economy was bad. Okay, you know what? The economy was bad. It was. 2020 was a pandemic. In 2019, the economy was good, though. The fact that there's a partisan view of the economy says a lot. It means independent voters, in my opinion, are the only thing that really matters. Who do they agree with? Well, I tell you this right now, my friends, the economy is objectively bad. Inflation rates at 8.5%, objectively bad. So for anybody to say fairly good or very good, I'm just like, that's wrong. That is wrong. Maybe your job is going well. I'll tell you this, timcast.com, we're trucking along. We're doing great. We're in this mobile studio, costs a couple $100,000 to build, to buy and then build out everything inside. It's expensive. Yeah, our business is booming. It would be booming more if the people we served, if the people who watch these videos and subscribe to our website were doing better themselves, because we are only strong as the weakest link. Now, that being said, I don't say that to humble brag or rub anything in anyone's faces. No, I'm eternally grateful that everyone who watches has helped lift us to this position. But I am not so insane to think that simply because our business is working, the economy is doing well. No, the economy is doing miserably. I hear it all day, every day from everyone. Just because, I'll put it this way. You're on an island You're on top of a skyscraper when the Great Flood happens, and you look around like everything's fine up here. You know, we got grass on the roof, we got vegetables growing in our rooftop garden. When it rains, we have water. We have a water filter system. What's the problem? Seems like things are going great. And you look down, there's 15 feet of water washing everyone away. And sure, people on the lower floors of the building might be like, hey man, things are getting bad. We're not underwater yet, but the water's rising and we're worried. These wealthy people and these Democrats have plugged their ears and they're saying everything's fine and I don't need to look down. For those of us who work at Timcast, who work at these other platforms, and apparently Republicans, we're looking down and we're like, yo, the water level's increasing. People are going to get washed away in this flood. We need to do something about it. Perhaps the analogy is imperfect because I don't know how you stop a flood. But when you've got people who are voting for policy and not recognizing how bad things are, lying to you, cheating in debates through bias, well, don't be surprised when the Republicans pull back and then just go for it. You have lost your connection. The Democrats have severed it. They've gone too far off the plot. And because of that, Republicans are also unleashed. They've tilted back to a slightly more right a little bit. The Democrats have gone off the rails. So what am I supposed to say? I'm not a fan of wide-reaching, outright abortion bans. I don't have all the answers. I have heard the moral arguments, the nuanced arguments from the pro-life crowd, and I totally agree on many of their positions and recognize them. Perhaps we were better off when the answer was safe, legal, and rare. But we're not there anymore. Now it's all or nothing. Enshrining the right to abortion with no restrictions in some states, outright banning them in others. Perhaps that's the strong moral issue that acts as the spark for a civil war. Or maybe I'm wrong. Either way, the Republicans are saying we will no longer play in these debates. The separation is getting worse. What happens in these upcoming elections? I don't know, but I think Republicans are going to win. And I implore you to go out and vote in your primaries and make sure it's not going to be these rhinos. It's not going to be the corrupt establishment Democrat masquerading as Republicans. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.